For thousands of years, whether united, divided, or under foreign occupation, China was ruled by emperors. The overarching idea was the mandate of heaven. China needed an emperor, but if the emperor did a bad job, he'd lose the holy mandate of heaven to rule and suddenly experience bad fortune and loss until another worthy emperor took his place. It's how all of the dynasties justified their rule all the way up to the Qing dynasty, which currently ruled China in the early 1900s. However, in 1911, it was overthrown in a revolution. Out of the ashes of the revolution, a man named Yat-Sen would become the first president of the new Chinese Republic. The Chinese Republic didn't require any mandate of heaven, as a republic was significantly different than anything China had ever governed with before. China had also gone through half a century of being beaten in several wars, losing territory, and failing to modernize in both technology and diplomacy. Sun Yat-sen didn't want that to happen to the Republic of China like it did to the Qing dynasty. Before the Republic was declared, Sun Yat-sen made several tours in Europe to promote the idea of a free China. Starting from 1905, he developed what would be known as his 3 principles of the people. Sometimes it's called tridemism, but overall these were 3 key ideas that Sun Yat-sen had for a successful China as he saw it, and this video is going to go over all 3 of those. Before I start explaining the 3 principles, here's a language lesson for you. Languages can be tricky to perfectly translate. Chinese is a very different language from English, and so not everything will have an exact translation. Objects are one thing, but ideas and concepts are another. The first principle, Minsu, is one of those ideas. The closest translation of Minsu is populism, but Sun Yat-sen described it as the people's government and nation. Because of that, many would translate this word as nationalism. But Sun Yat-sen wasn't talking about the scary right-wing nationalism that 4chan users shed tears of joy over. This had nothing to do with ethnicity, but rather uniting China. Here's another lesson on China for you. Not everyone inside China is Chinese. I mean, yeah, they're of the nation China, but in terms of language and culture, they are extremely diverse. Chinese is not a language per se, but rather it's called Mandarin and is currently the official language of China. But other languages spoken in China that are in the same language family are still unique languages and popular in China as well. One popular example is Cantonese in the south. In addition, the most common ethnicity in China is the Han Chinese, but there are many others too. The West loves to put them all in the same basket and call them Chinese, but they're really not all the same. Sun Yat-sen wanted to unite all of these ethnicities and cultures as a single Chinese nationality to stand up to Europeans and Americans. In fact, the first flag of the Chinese Republic has 5 stripes, which each represented the 5 largest groups in China: the Han Chinese, Manchu, Mongolians, Tibetans, and Muslims. Yeah, I know, Muslim isn't an ethnicity, but Chinese Muslims were kind of singled out a lot in Chinese history, so they were kind of treated as one. The second principle is Mingquan and means the people's power. He was using it to represent democracy. Obviously, China being a republic, that makes sense. He wanted the people to participate in government to express their needs and wants so the government could be of good service in making life for the people better. He also wanted to adopt the 3 branches of government model like the US, except instead of 3 branches, he wanted 5. So aside from the executive, legislative, and judicial branches, he wanted an auditing branch and an examination branch. The audit branch would be the watchdog over the other branches to make sure corruption doesn't happen. Then the examination branch gave tests to aspiring civil servants to make sure that they were worthy and knowledgeable of running a government. The third principle is Minsheng, meaning the people's livelihood. Sun Yat-sen wanted the people well off. He thought that every Chinese citizen deserved clothing, food, housing, and health care, and that the government should help in any way it could. How he planned to have this welfare was through Georgism. Sun Yat-sen was a big fan of Henry George, an American economist who came up with Georgism. Georgism is the type of economics that's different from both capitalism and socialism. If capitalism involves capital and socialism is based on labor, then Georgism focuses on land. In Georgism, there's only one tax, and it's a tax on land value. How it works is complicated and probably deserves its own video someday, but basically a land value tax is the one tax that doesn't tax people's labor or their income, just the land they live on. It was also seen as fair because if you were rich and had more land, you paid more, and if you were poor and had less land, you paid less. Sun Yat-sen said that the only means of supporting the government is an infinitely just, reasonable, and equitably distributed tax, and on it we will found our new system. And Sun Yat-sen thought that Georgism was the perfect tax for that. Now, these three principles didn't quite get fully implemented during the Chinese Republic under Sun Yat-sen. Why? Because in the middle of his rule, he was usurped by a guy named Yuan Shikai, who tried to re-establish the Chinese Empire and form his own dynasty. Then, when he died, China broke out into civil war. Sun Yat-sen died in 1925, but his three principles greatly influenced China. Both Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong liked these principles and would adopt them, although both of them would butcher them several times. But today in Taiwan, Sun Yat-sen's three principles are held to high standards. There is indeed a land tax in place, and there are 5 branches of government, and it's a democracy. Who knows what would have happened if Yuan Shikai didn't ruin everything? Either way, as we can see with present-day Taiwan, some ideas continue onwards and survive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. If you want to support this channel, you can support it through donating to my Patreon or my Patron Blades. Links to both are in the description.